Hello and welcome back to Londonderry Bands from the Beat of the Drum series of podcasts for Good Relations Week. This podcast features the Hamilton Flute Band and their trip to the Síamsa Sráide Street Festival in Swinford, County Mayo in 1995 and 2019, where the band participated in both a street parade and sit-down concert over the weekend to an audience largely unfamiliar with the Northern Ireland marching band scene. Today I'm joined by two members from the Hamilton Flute Band, Robert McGonigle, who organised and participated in the festival in 1995 and 2019 and maintained a friendship with the people of Swinford in the last 25 years, and Tim Cairns, who participated in the festival in 2019, as we go through some memories of the festival. First, I'm joined by Robert McGonigle. Robert, why did the band go to Swinford in 1995?
It's a long time ago, Stephen, but from memory I recall being contacted by Bridge O'Connell in Swinford. She would have been, I think, the chairperson of the Swinford committee that was running their annual festival. So it was quite a strange request, and one that we obviously discussed with the band first. The band's reaction was very positive at that time. I do recall Billy Cairns and the late Billy Wilson and myself heading off for Swinford on a very, very wet Monday, and it rained the whole way down to Swinford, and it rained the whole way back, and we met with Bridge particularly and a couple of committee members, and it wasn't that really long. I think it was about maybe 3 or 4 weeks before we actually went down the first time, just to look around and see what was there and sort of accommodation. So that's where it all started, and it started with a very successful trip.
What did the first trip consist of?
We did a concert actually we went down on the Friday, and we actually did a concert that evening, not on the same location as the second one. The second one was a much better location, but it was really well attended. We were very, very well received. And we did that. We more or less had the Saturday off, and there was the festival, and the band got to know a lot of people, and then we did the parade in the afternoon. And in 1995, a flute band from here parading in the Republic of Ireland was probably quite an achievement in a sense, and we all wondered how it would go down, but thankfully it was very, very positive reception. And when we left at the end of that weekend, where we didn't see a cloud in the sky, a perfect weekend, we had made many friends. So, you know, that's the way it happened along. And it was a similar format, with the exception that the concert was the Friday night and the parade was the Sunday, whereas this year it was the Saturday and the Sunday.
What was it like to stay in people's houses in Swinford in 1995, and did it lead to lasting friendships?
Oh, it did. I mean, I can really, of course, only speak for myself, but I do, at the same time, I do know that other members stayed in other people's houses, and I think that at that time that was great because they got to know the people of Swinford really well, and they came away with lasting friendships. Personally, we came away with a very strong lasting friendship, and an elderly lady, and I can say elderly now like myself, probably she might have been the same age, but anyway, she was elderly to me then. But she lived on her own in a very big house on the outskirts, and Mrs. Mcgonagall, whose sons were both in the Irish Army but had since come out, and they owned a charter business in Dublin Airport. And she was great. She really was a marvellous lady, and we got to know her extremely well. And one of the highlights personally of our weekend, not apart from the band participation, of course, was the fact that her son came up from Dublin to see her on that Sunday before we did the parade. But he landed in the front lawn on a helicopter, and Linda, myself, and the three, Lucy, Simon and Ben, all got into that helicopter, and he took us for a ride out around County Mayo, and you can imagine the excitement of that. Never mind the kids, I was excited. But it capped a super weekend, and I think when we did the parade I was still buzzing. So no, it was a really, really good weekend, and it had lots and lots of memories. We did, and I would go down to Galway quite a bit, and we stopped off to see Mrs. McAvity once, and strangely enough, there was nobody about, and we sort of tentatively made our way into the house, and we came across her in the kitchen, and she was quite elderly, and it was obvious, I think, that she was just suffering from probably dementia. We're not sure whether she knew us or not, but she let on she did. And that's the last we saw of her, unfortunately, because she passed away not long after that. But we did make a very good friend of her, and of course, our friendship with Bríd has gone on from 1995 and is still there, because we've been down to see Bríd on a number of occasions when we're pass off on the way down. So there's a very, very strong relationship there that has come out of it.
Was the Swinford trip in 1995 a brave thing for the band to participate in, as you were just coming out of ceasefires and coming to the end of the Troubles?
It was. It was indeed, and it factored heavily on our decision as to whether we would do it or not. It wasn't that difficult because the band felt that, let's give it a go. Great, it's a wonderful opportunity, and it was, and we grasped the nettle, and it was a success. We're not saying that when we came back there was a few remarks went our way, because strangely enough the week before we were opening a music festival in Swinford in the Republic of Ireland, and 7 days on we were parading on the 12th of August, and there were a few remarks, stingy remarks, but generally it was accepted, but by the band, totally accepted, and particularly, I would say, to a man, when they returned from Swinford, they were all buzzing by the reception and the friends that they had met, and something that they hadn't experienced before. None of us had experienced before. So from that point of view, it was good, and all the more from the point of view that it was when it happened, right at the back end of the Troubles, so to speak, and it was a big chance by the Swinford Festival Committee as well, because, and I know that Bríd told me that, that there were a number of people that were not totally taken by the fact for the invitation, but they were swayed afterwards, and it worked for everybody. But it was a chance that we took at that time.
What was your reaction like to the negative comments?
I would like to think that the comments were more, like to think that they were more light-hearted banter than serious, and they passed over quickly, and it was a minority of people who mentioned that it wasn't really that serious, but there was just a few wee remarks about playing in the Republic one week and marching in the city on the 12th, but it passed, and it was never mentioned anymore.
What was the reaction like in 1995 from the people of Swinford?
The people of Swinford, certainly they were very enthused by it, and as the weekend went on, and sort of things between the band arriving and meeting new people, and just the whole thing that surrounded it, Protestant Flute Band from Northern Ireland going to play in the Republic of Ireland right at the back end of a long period of troubles and violence. It was something that they probably were not sure what they were going to get down the road either. But it proved at the end of the week that they were sorry to see us go. Most of the members, all of the members of our band were sorry to go, and I know one or two wanted to stay on. So it worked for both, and therein lay the foundation for the second trip, of course.
Was the trip talked about between the 25 years between both events?
Hi, there was always talk about Swinford, and as we all know, personnel and bands change over the years, and in 25 years there's quite a change, but in our band there's still a fair nucleus of members who went there 25, 26 years ago. But there was a lot of talk about it. The difference this time round was that there was that large nucleus of band members who had experienced, and were able to say, look, this is good. You're not going to have to be afraid of anything. There's nobody's going to sort of approach you or whatever. This is all good, and it's great to have that opportunity to go down again. So when the second chance came through, the new structure of the band from whenever I was there at the head of it was 26 years ago, it was very easy to accept, and people immediately looked forward to it, but it didn't have the same feel, shall we say, as it had 26 years ago of trepidation. You know, we've decided to do this, could be good, what if? But fortunately the what if turned to be very positive, so this time around we could go without that trepidation, and we had more of a sense of excitement of having a good weekend.
Was it annoying that something so positive went on in 1995 and wasn't really talked about outside of band circles?
No, it wasn't, and it is a long time ago. It's 26 years ago, so it's hard just to remember back whether we wanted to make it public or whether we just wanted to go and do it and not make a fuss about it in case it went pear-shaped. And I'm being perfectly honest here, I can't remember. I can't remember whether we decided just to keep it low-key or go to the media, and probably we didn't, because we didn't need funding for a start. It was mostly funded by the people in Swinford. They did the accommodation, they paid for the bus. We just had to turn up. So it's not as if we were having to try and make a case for funding and go to the media and have it across community and stuff like that, because they paid for it. So we just went and we did it. It wasn't picked up by the media in any way at that time. There was a short documentary went out on RTE probably 3-4 months afterwards. Very short documentary, and was quite a good one. No, it's hard to remember what we did at that time in terms of media, but I would be quite sure that there was no media attraction at that time, which that's a good question in a sense, because you would wonder why, because it would have been quite a big thing.
Does it annoy you today when bands are demonised by the media and the wider community?
It does indeed. I know I would have my own personal thoughts on it all, but as you know, being a flute band person yourself, you know, people outside and even within our own community, they look on flute bands as flute bands. They're either first flute bands or they're akin to almost orchestras with a wide range of flutes and a very expensive kit out there, and you're still a flute band. So even within your own community, people still see flute band. It doesn't categorise you in any sense, and unfortunately there are, mixed in with the Troubles, there are events, particularly more up around Belfast, where flute bands are almost seen right at the core of it, which is, you know, it's unfortunate, but it's seen that way. And if some of your own community think that way, well, from the Roman Catholic community, what do they think? So a flute band's a flute band, and they don't realise. So you were at the second Swinford one with us, and you're aware of the feedback and whatnot, and you know, you're probably aware of the Facebook comment that went on where there was somebody in the audience who was a Sinn Féin, whatever, equivalent of an MP, TD, and put on, you know, well, nobody told us that flute bands could play like that, and it was liked by Mary Lou McDonald. You know, that's progress. That's huge progress. but it doesn't last long, you know. That's fighting a losing battle all the time, you know, in that sense. In other words, you're categorised, and not all first flute bands, as you know and I know, should be categorised like that either. But that's the way it is, and it's very, very hard to counter.
What was the reaction like within the Hamilton Flute Band in 2019 when asked to participate in the Swinford Festival again?
My own personal was, love it. You know, I couldn't wait to, and it was almost because I'm no longer in the forefront of the band, I'd go and I play a flute and I go home, and that's life now as far as the band's concerned. But still very much always a part of it as president of the band. But I was almost trying to get make sure this comes off, you know, and let's hope that this does, and get in there and get it sorted, because my memory of the previous trip was there from 25, 26 years past, and it was so good, and of the whole family. But when you think, you know, as we said at the time, I think I did an interview, when we went the last time, Ben was playing the triangle and he was sitting on our knee, and the second time we went, he was the conductor, you know, and that has carried that whole way, transcended the whole way through those 25, 26 years. So, you know, when the shout came, my main concern was, don't let this go. We got to do this, you know. And the committee and the senior officers and committee sat down and they did a tremendous job. And it was great then to go and sit back just as an ordinary playing member. No worries, no stress levels. Is this going to happen? Is that just go and enjoy the weekend? And it really did work. It worked brilliantly well. And I hope it happens soon again before I'm not able to go. And really do. It would be great to have another go. I'm not saying that it will, but even if it happened within the next 5 to 10 years, I think it would be great for the band to do that again. But it's not something you could do terribly often, you know, because it's a novelty factor almost in a sense. For people down there, they don't know flute bands. They know flute bands, but when they come and they sit in an audience and you hear James Bond theme and Bohemian Rhapsody being played, this is a completely new style of flute band, and it's great for that image. But no, we were delighted, and the whole band were just 100% behind the project.
How did you go about choosing pieces for the concert and making it so different to 1995?
That was a huge difference, Stephen, and I'm sort of glad you brought that part out, because that was very, very important. The programme we put, well, time changes, music styles change, arrangements change. Arrangements have changed in flute bands over the years, and arrangements have become so complex now, and there's some tremendous flute band arrangers out there, so there's more opportunity for us to play that type of music now, because they're people on Sibelius and they're putting together this. So it's a choice of obviously the committee and the conductor to choose that. But we had the nucleus of a programme, and we had a lot of that stuff in our folder. But it's one thing having that in your folder and bringing it out and rehearsing it, but you've got to have a target, you've got to have a project or an event where you're going to display that and play that type of music. And when you're going to do that, you've got to rehearse it to a high level. So that gave us the opportunity to bring a lot of that stuff out and put it together in a programme. But then I found, how long are we going to play? We're going to play for half an hour. There's no point going to Swinford and playing for half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, and there's going to be a break in the middle. So you're going to have to maybe extend it out over a couple of hours with a break in the middle, and you're going to have to put a bit of variety into it. And that's then where we started to look at the individuals with talent in the band, of which we have quite a few. So that's where they were fillers, and those fillers worked so well. They really did. And credit to those who did them. And to John Cairns, who did the accordion and then brought out the wee pipe things, tin whistles. That was great, and the audience loved it. And it just breaks from that, what you're doing, to something different. It's almost like a wee light interval, and then you're back again. And then the idea, of course, of the bass guitar, that was a wonderful extra depth, especially in stuff like James Bond and Bohemian Rhapsody. It just added that total depth to the whole sound, and it changed it, and it worked so well. So there was, when you analyse it and break it all down, the second one was a much more professional performance. But then 25, 26 years have evolved, and things have all changed, and arrangements, as I say, are so different to what flute bands used to play. They were more basic arrangements, and you didn't have the big contrabasses and stuff like that. So the sound has changed as well, and you are veering then more towards an orchestral type of ensemble.
How proud were you on a personal level when your son Ben was conducting the band and Simon playing solos on this trip?
You know, when you have your children and they grow up and they become a part of the band life, and they become very much a part of the band life, but when you see them coming to that level, you know, Simon on a flute, and I mean, I only wish I could play a quarter well as he can play a flute. Some people say that they take it from you, you know. I doubt it. It's a natural built talent that you have to have and build that sound. And well, Ben, of course, we took him to piano lessons and he didn't bother, and then he just took it on himself, and all of a sudden he blossomed into an organist, did his musical degree, and then thankfully and then came in as conductor of the band. And to have it from what we had in 1995, where Simon was, in his teens, early teens, and just sort of a minor player in the band, to playing solo in the band, and then out front on his own, with Ben accompanying him and Ben conducting the band. A very, very proud moment for both Linda and myself, and never really thought that it would go that way. And you know, when Ben as well, knew Simon would come up the ranks, and he blossomed as years went on. But Ben went down the road more into organ music and piano music, and then all of a sudden and he played the drums, of course, in the band, which was quite strange. We do recall one instance, without rattling on, just not that many years ago, we did a concert in Christchurch, and we played the test piece, which I just can't remember what you call it. It was an up-and-coming test piece. We did a concert anyway, and we played the test piece. I think it was Night in the Bear Mountain, which is quite a difficult piece of music. But then we had a filler, and that filler was Ben went over and he played he wasn't the conductor at the time. He went and played the organ. He played the piece that he was doing for his final year, and the feet were going and the pedals and the stops were coming in and out, and you could just sort of see the band just looked and thought, that's not the Ben we knew, you know. That talent, we didn't realise he could do that, you know. And then the next piece we played, he came along and he stood in the back row with the drummers and played the triangle, you know. And then eventually, not long after that, then became our conductor, and it seems to work. Yeah, I've obviously be biased, but it seems to have worked extremely well. But no, very, very proud to see both him and Ben, Simon and Ben, doing so well in the band, and it's part of now the future as I have moved into the back row, so to speak.
What was the reaction like from the people of Swinford this time in 2019?
The parade this time was probably different. You were there, and you know yourself that it was a wet day. Unfortunately, the weekend wasn't as good as the weekend we went by any stretch of an imagination the first time, so we had the weather to contend with, so there wasn't the same amount of people out as there was that first year, but nevertheless there was quite a few people out, and I felt we were well received by those that were there, and I think probably people who were there the previous night and saw the concert and then came out and saw the band in a completely different style of music, and and accepted and appreciated that we were there, and I say once again it worked extremely well.
What would you say to bands wanting to participate in events like this?
I very strongly believe it doesn't matter where you're playing music. This is what you're about. You're a flute band, you're playing music. There's no politics, but there's no religion, there's no politics. You're playing a musical instrument, and that's what you're giving people. That's your product. So in terms of opportunities to go, albeit the Republic of Ireland, to England or Wales, spread the word about flute bands. We don't really need to spread so much in Scotland because there are a similar sort of thing going on there. England and Wales would know what a flute band is, and you have further to reach to the Republic of Ireland, where people think flute bands represent one thing, which they don't all represent. 95%, 96% don't represent that. So it's a challenge, and it's the opportunity to get the word out that there's something special there. It's different. It's not like a brass band or anything else, which people see in the TV. They see brass bands all the time in England because they're again a huge part of life, just like flute bands are in Northern Ireland. But it's getting out there and getting people to know that flute bands are all good, and that is so important. They're all good, and they're there for music.
Will a day come where you're spoke about as a musician first before being called a band member?
No, not in my lifetime, unfortunately. I'm sorry to say that. We've still a long way to go. We have a huge way to go, and we keep going backwards a wee bit, and then we go forwards a bit, and we go back maybe further and forwards. I would have thought, 20 odd years ago when the peace process came about, that we'd be much further on by now. That wasn't a great bit of thinking, to be honest. It becomes quite depressing at times. But it just takes one event to knock it back, and the problem is the media will be all over it, and then you suffer greatly. And the media is there at everything, and if the media is not there, mobile phones are there, so they miss nothing. And that's what the media is all about. So if there's something bad happens, they're not interested in the Swinfords of this world. They're not really interested, because that's not the audience they're trying to reach. It's sensationalist stuff. So if, say, a band steps out of line and plays going past a chapel or something like that when they weren't supposed to do that, then if they weren't there, the mobile phone was there, and the next thing you see it on the television. That's going to be very, very hard to change. I think it's going to be, and certainly, and I know, I'm quite certain that it's not going to happen in my lifetime, but at the same time, I do believe that it's much easier for flute bands from Northern Ireland to go and play there in the Republic of Ireland. Much easier, much more acceptable, and it doesn't go with the same trepidation as it would have done 25 years ago. My goodness, 50 years ago, started the Troubles thereabouts, 40 years ago, anyway, right in the middle of them. Nope, couldn't have happened. So, in a sense, there has been progress, and there has been big progress. But I'm not sure there's been enough progress to say that if you mention a flute band, that there's not going to be an adverse reaction from certain parts of the community.
Has playing at events like Swinford made you or your band think differently?
That's a difficult question, Stephen, because I can only give my angle on it. That's my impression on it. I think our band have always, we never talk politics, and it's strange, I can think back, and we don't talk politics in the band. People might think that's strange, but no, we don't. And because of that, then when things like that come up, it's easier to accept something and say, no, I'm not going down there because that's in the Republic of Ireland, etc., etc. That has never come into it. So I don't know whether going down there has changed. That's a personal thing. It has changed attitudes and people's perception of what is down there, so to speak. But I mean, let's face it, Protestants, whether in a flute band or what band or whatever they're doing, they all go down across the border on a regular basis on holidays. And there's no difference. The people are no different, So it's just getting that realisation that we've got to live with each other. And both communities have got to accept what each community has got to give it. And that we're not going to do any damage to them and get on with it. But in terms of individuals within the band and changing their perception, I don't think most of the members in our band needed a lot of their perception changed. They were prepared to move on with the times, and thankfully that will not change to my mind. And because we've visited Swinford twice, it makes it much easier to realise that it's so easy to go down there and play to people who have a completely different perception of what you do and accept you.
Are you proud to represent your culture in a positive way through playing in the band?
Oh, very much so, of course. It is our culture. I've grown up in it since I was, can't remember what time. My father was in the old No Surrender Flute Band, and I went in there to start and probably was there until I think it was about 11. So you're talking about 1961. And I was in the No Surrenders until I was 20. The year internment broke out about 1971, 72. So I was in the No Surrenders until then. And we rehearsed in Barrack Street, just off Bishop Street there, right at the top of the Bogside. I went on holidays for a fortnight and came back, and an internment had been introduced, and that was the end of the No Surrender Flute Band in Barrack Street, and we closed down. And I was out of banding for a year. And then I went into the Hamiltons, so I've been, with the Hamiltons right through. So it's my culture, it's been a part of my life and my family's life. So in a sense it represents me and my family as well, and the culture that I have come along with, and we're proud of it. But it's seen as it is, and not as a band that generates trouble and stuff like that just because it's a flute band. But we're proud of what we do, and we like to take that to further shores and let people see exactly what we can deliver.
And finally, the theme for Good Relations Week this year is Brighter Days Ahead. Can bands be the catalyst for change?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, that's the word, the catalyst. I think if we can get that 2 or 3% that's generally generates that vision that the other community have of flute bands, and we can get them just to, come in along with everybody else and accept, other people's cultures as well, and not get involved in trouble, but go out there and play music. That's when the acceptance starts to come along, and people will just, and that has happened. You could probably say in one sense, and I'm sort of contradicting myself in a sense, because you look, for instance, at the work that has been done, particularly by the apprentice boys in this city, and maintaining the 12th of August every year. Now that's going back, that Saturday, and I remember back when I was a lot younger, right in the 70s and into the 80s, it was, you could just see, you could hear trouble in the background, you could see black plumes of smoke going up. It just was seen to generate trouble, and it wasn't out there to generate trouble, but that's the way it was used to sort of create riots and stuff like that. But now we've got the 12th of August in the city, we've got Lundy's Day in the city, and goes off. People don't even know it happens. And that's been down to the fantastic work of the apprentice boys and other community leaders that people in this city are accepting that it's there, it's our culture, albeit we're a very small minority. They might not respect it, they might not like it, but they're prepared to let it happen because they probably now see that it doesn't represent any issue with them, and they're going to be attacked in their homes and things like that. And it happens, and we just go now from year to year, and that we don't have that same. So, in one sense, things have moved in that direction. I say it's not a total acceptance, but people see now that let them have it. They're not causing any trouble. It's just a few hours of a day, and they're entitled to it. But the amount of work and hours and days and months and years that must have gone in to get to that point is. I really do respect the amount of work that has been done by that organisation and other organisations.
Now I'm joined by Tim Cairns from the Hamilton Flute Band. Tim, did the band talk about the trip in the 25 years between the first occasion whenever the band visited Swinford and the second time in 2019?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Absolutely. I joined the band just after the Swinford trip. So it was the end of August 1995 that I joined the band, so about 2 or 3 weeks after they'd been. So when I joined, there was still an awful lot of buzz about Swinford, but as a new member, meeting loads of new people, I was probably at that stage unaware of it. But as I grew up in the band and over the years of going away both on day trips and weekend trips to other places, the Swinford trip was always something that was talked about on the buses. The crack that was had whenever they were down there, the people that people had met. I was aware there was quite a number of people in the band. In 1995, the band was actually hosted by local families, so people had stayed with families or in the church hall and things like that. And a lot of people had kept up those personal relationships over the years, and we're still exchanging Christmas cards. And you were aware of some of the names of some of the people in Swinford that, with the various stories that I heard, started to become familiar. So it was something that I was very aware of.
What was the reaction like for the other bands here and just across the board about the band's trip there?
I think looking back on it, realistically, the Hamilton band was quite progressive in taking on these kind of cross-border trips in that stage of the early 90s, because we'll have to remember this is really kind of pre-peace process and that kind of thing. So to take on trips, across the border as such, was quite a big undertaking. Now, as I say, I was still very young when I joined the band in 1995. But again, I know from conversations and discussions that I've been part of in the following years, generally the response from other bands was pretty positive. But there was a small undercurrent of, what are you doing going down there? And, are you changing, or are you going to come out and march on the 12th of August, the week after you have been in County Mayo playing type thing? But overall, I think 99% of it was very positive, and bands are keen to show what they can do on a different stage.
Would that have annoyed you any, if there was any criticism from whoever it was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think my outlook is very much as a marching band with a long history, we're very proud of who we are and what we do, and we'll never forget that. But it's up to us to take what we can do and showcase our abilities on a different stage. And to me, that doesn't matter if it's in a different part of Northern Ireland, if it's in Southern Ireland, if it's in Scotland, England, or Wales. If anybody wants to book and take us to Australia, I'll happily look into it and do that. But I think within the band scene in Northern Ireland, we've got such a strong variety of bands and musicians. Many of whom, and I think it's really important to say, many of whom aren't professionally trained. The vast majority of people in bands are absolute amateurs who have grown up in bands and learned what they know from the people within bands and learned their skills from there. So why would you not take that and show off what you can do? Because we put in an awful lot of hard work, as every band does. to get to a standard. And if you're not going to show what you're doing, then you're wasting everybody's time, really, if we're being honest about it. So for somebody then to turn around and go, why would you go down to County Mayo as an example? You would be like, well, why would you not? Absolutely, let's go and showcase and be proud of our culture and be proud of what we can do. There's lots of negativity still around PUL culture and what that is, and there's lots of people that will be quick to try and throw stones at our culture. So when we've got such a vibrant, talented group of people, let's go and show that off, and show what we can do.
Would it have annoyed you, or in the band at the time especially, we were coming out, it was just after the ceasefires and all, and you're still sort of coming out of the troubles and so on, that something like that first trip wasn't like really featured in the media as such? And yes, it would have been talked about in band circles and maybe even in local press, but that's something that do you think that should have been picked up on and really pushed?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it comes to, there's two sides to the story. One is, at the time, and not being part of it, did we promote it enough to media channels and get it out there? And again, we have to remember that this is pre-social media, so it's not as easy as going on Facebook, hitting a button, and suddenly you've got 20,000 watches of a video. So it's certainly much more difficult, but also, why did media channels not pick up on that? I think if we look back to that period of time, the band had quite a number of years where we went on quite exciting trips, one of which was the Lord Mayor show in London. And it was picked up by the BBC, and the BBC ran a half-hour documentary programme on that at the time. And arguably, by not doing something similar for the Mayo trip and the Swinford trip, we probably missed a ticket to showcase it. There are relationships that exist within this island, both north and south, and we're being part of strengthening that.
Whenever the invitation came back to Swinford in 2019, what was the band reaction, especially for the young people and the people that didn't go the first time?
I think absolutely the initial response was massively positive, and an awful lot of excitement about going back. We've been fortunate over the years that we've managed to keep weekend trips and stuff going with the band, whether that's to Scotland, the contest, or London again, and things like that. So the idea of getting away for a weekend as a group is always well received. And as I say, there has been so much positivity around the first Swinford trip and personal relationships that people wanted to rekindle, that when the opportunity arose, it was a massive yes, let's try and do this. I think the first time as a committee we took it to the band and said, we've received this invitation. Do we think we want to go, or are we able to go? It was a resounding yes. There was nobody that said no. So I think from that initial excitement and positivity and wanting to do it, the only difference then was whenever, as a committee, we sat in a room and we kind of went, can we actually do this from a logistical point of view? Again, as I say, things have changed from the 1990s, and that in those days when people were getting hosted by families, that's not really something you can do anymore. And especially when you look at the age profile of the band with some of the older members. So the logistics of, right, we need a hotel that's going to be able to put up 50 of us, somewhere convenient to Swinford, we need to get there, etc., etc. Costs, how feasible and how sensible is this an idea to take on? But I think that the underlying excitement was something of, yeah, regardless of what the obstacles are, we'll overcome them. And that came from the Swinford organising committee as well, that they very much so were like, we want you to come and we will get you here no matter what we have to do. And I think for the young people of the band, that was an opportunity of, oh wow, it was exciting to go somewhere new, to play to a different audience. You didn't know who the audience was going to be or where we were going to be. We knew that we had been asked to do both a concert and a street parade the following day. So we knew we were going to showcase both aspects of the band. And I think in many ways, it really took the band, I don't want to necessarily say to a new level, but it encouraged the professionalism, because we knew we had something big to plan for. So, the initial invitation was for a solo concert of just the band. And that's a substantial amount of music to put together for one sit-down concert with only one band. And then for the street parade of things, I have to give a massive credit to the percussion, the drum section of the band, because the drum corps put in an awful lot of hard work to really get the presentation and the stick lifting and the decorum of the unit really up to scratch again. And probably when we now look back at some of the older videos that we had of the band, some often we kind of go, yeah, we kind of had maybe let things slip a wee bit, and just wasn't as good as it should be. So it really just cranked us up another notch to be professional and put on as good a show as we could do.
Was it a big thing to have a full concert yourself? So how did you go about picking pieces that would be different? Some that would showcase like marches and then solos and so on?
Yeah, so again, we kind of, as both a committee and also with Ben, our musical director, we sat down and went, how are we going to make a programme that's long enough to be a full concert? I think nowadays the vast majority of concerts that we play in, it tends to be a shorter segment that you're playing, for a 20 or 30 minutes at a time and then going away. Whereas to sit down and play for the guts of an hour and a half, how do we actually do this? How many pieces are we going to have to learn? Is this going to be possible? So we very much wanted a programme that showed the variety of music that the band played. So as I've already said, we're massively aware and proud of our history as a marching band. So we were always going to play marches and kind of the traditional flute band marches, if you like. But also we're at a stage now where there's so many really good arrangements of more modern pieces of music that's out there. And let's go and surprise people, I think, was our thought process of, what have we got within our repertoire that is going to need rehearsed and practiced and brought up to speed, that people are going to go, wow, I didn't know a flute band could do that. Let's think of ourselves almost as a small orchestra rather than we can only play marches and go out there. So we obviously started to look at our repertoire that we have and tried to pick a program that would be enjoyable to people listening, varied, and also enjoyable to perform. Because if you're playing something, as you know yourself, that you're not enjoying, if you have to practice that for maybe 6 months in a run-up, that's a long 6 months of practicing something that you don't like. So it was something that the band was going to enjoy playing and that we were going to enjoy playing. So once we kind of had a core number of pieces that we thought were suitable, things like the typewriter is one example. So that was an absolute new piece for the band, where we introduced Elisa, who was the chairperson at the time, playing a typewriter along with the band. But it just brought a visual for something for people to watch, as well as a musical aspect. If you listen to the piece, there's an awful lot of very good playing in the background from the band, but the typewriter's the soloist. So that was like, let's flip things in the head and do something different. Again, we wanted to showcase our drummers and the work that they had done. So let's put in, a few things that can show the stick lifting and the drummer's ability. Let's put in things that people will enjoy. So some of the old classics, if you like, the Irish jigs. I'm trying to remember now exactly what the program was, but the things that people will enjoy listening to.
Irish Washerwoman and Lord of the Dance and stuff.
Absolutely.
Like
so things that people essentially look for toe tappers, for want of a better word, that people would listen to, get their toes tapping, and ideally maybe get a few bit of hand clapping as well along the way. So something that showed off the whole band. And we're then very aware that within the band, we've got lots and lots of very talented people. And again, as I said before, within the band, none of these people are professional musicians. Music is very much their social life. It's their hobby. So to be able to get people to stand up either as a solo or as a group and perform on a different stage, I think it's positive for those people to encourage them to show off their talents and their skills, and also for the band scene as a whole to say, look, these are people that were taught within a band system. Everything they learned from the Hamilton Flute Band, and this is what we can do. And it didn't have to be just flutes. It might have been a tin whistle. As an example, it might have been Ben on the piano. Absolutely fabulous player. So let's show that off. And I think that's what we looked at to go, there's a core program of pieces that the band's going to play. And what do we then add to that? Who within the band is going to be happy to do it, but what could we do? So it was just a cumulative effort of looking at our options, putting together a program that we knew that people were going to enjoy and that we were going to enjoy playing, because that, I think, is the key. Those two things, that if you're listening and enjoying and playing and enjoying it, you're on to a winner. And again, we wanted to shake things up, so that things like having young Thomas Alford on the bass guitar, probably 5 or 10 years ago, people, if you told people that we were going to add a bass guitar in, along with a flute band, they would have gone like, "What are you doing? Why are you even thinking about that?" But when we've got somebody as talented as Thomas with the ability and playing a piece, in this example, like the Bohemian Rhapsody, that needs that, kind of long wafting bass line that Queen added to it. So we can do that. Why not do it? You have to look beyond the kind of traditional constraints and go, what have we got and what can we do? So I think really that's how we got to where we got to.
You mentioned there about some of the solos and quartets and all. How proud were you to play with your father, with him on the tin whistle and you on the piano?
Yeah, that was something that I really enjoyed. My dad and I don't often play together in that kind of setting. It's quite seldom that we actually play together as a duo. Quite often, if we ever go anywhere, he'll play for a wee bit and then I'll play for a wee bit if somebody asks. But playing together, so it was really quite special for me to do that, and just to be able to enjoy, Dad's musicianship. And again, I go back to somebody like Dad, who's a 50-year member of the band, has never had a formal music lesson in his life, but has an innate musical ability and musical talent that he can pick up nearly any musical instrument and get a tune out of and get a note out of it. So to be able to show that off, and it's amazing. I think when you listen back to the recordings, something, and I mean this with the best of respect, as simple as a tin whistle nearly gets as big a reception from the audience as some of the more difficult pieces, because it's something that people are used to hearing and they like to hear, and it's that little traditional element as well, the traditional pieces. And so yeah, for me personally, it was a special moment to do that with Dad. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and hopefully it's something that we'll do again at some point.
What was the reaction like from the people of Swinford, both to the concert and to the parade on the Sunday?
The reaction from Swinford was just fantastic. I don't have the words and the superlatives to put it into audio for you. Everywhere that we went that weekend, we were welcomed with open arms. We were patted on the back. We had our hands shook. We had people telling us either, "I can't wait to listen to you tonight, thanks for coming," or "I really enjoyed the concert, you were amazing, it was brilliant." When we were on the street, the people were clapping as we went past. When we stood by them, they were clapping. People were taking pictures and taking videos. And just everywhere that we went, we were welcomed with open arms. And I have to say that was true also before the trip. I went down, I do a little bit of work in that part of the country fairly regularly, and I went down to meet with Breege and Brendan as a bit of a starter for 10 to work out where we were going to be and things. And even the first night that I met Breege and Brendan and had a meal with them and a conversation of how we can make things work, the welcome that I got from people was so amazing. And I remember, like, we had a meal and we went into a little pub to have a drink afterwards, and Breege almost was introducing me to people like some kind of superstar. This is Tim from the Hamilton Flute Band, who are coming down in a month's time, and you'll have to come to the concert because it'll be like nothing you've ever heard before. And it really was. That was how it was set out the whole time. And again, I have to say the hospitality from the local hotel who fed and watered us for nothing on both days that we were there. I think beforehand we expected that if we got a couple of sandwiches, we would be pretty happy. And yet we went into this hotel and sat down and were asked, "Do you want chicken, beef, or fish?" type thing. And I had a full meal presented to us, and that was all done out of people's generosity and hospitality. And absolutely everywhere we went, as I say, we were greeted with a handshake and a smile. And it was the overwhelming feeling was, thank you for coming and showcasing for us, because we've really enjoyed it. And I think it was just really gratifying that the effort that we put in, both musically and also logistically to get everybody there was rewarded with that kind of positivity and welcome. It was fantastic.
What about our bands? Would you say that to them that experiences like this to do it either in the Republic of Ireland or other good relations events around Northern Ireland or anything?
Absolutely. I think without question, go and do it. Be proud of who you are, be proud of your culture, be proud of where you're from, but also be proud of your music and be proud of your ability, because music is its own language, and anybody that appreciates good music will appreciate a good band, regardless of where they're from. And when we talk about subcultures within the media and things like that, there will always be undercurrents that will want to paint bands and indeed bands and loyal orders and all different aspects of things as the bogeyman. And it's up to us to go out and tell people that actually no, we're not. We're just a talented group of people that have really strong connections to each other. With really strong family connections, band to band connections, but we now need to start making connections to people outside our own culture and showing them what we can do in our own communities, and showcasing our abilities. So absolutely, when you get the invitation, consider it, and where it's appropriate, go and do it, and be proud of going to do it. I think you go into everything with your eyes open and be aware of it. But my one kind of caveat is that we don't make any concessions wherever we go. So no matter where we go, we're the Hamilton Flute Band from Londonderry, and we're a marching flute band. And if you invite us, that's who you're inviting. You're not inviting the Hamilton Orchestral Flutes because we don't want to offend people by calling ourselves a flute band. We are a flute band. We're always going to be a flute band. So that's who you're inviting. So as long as the invitation is coming in the right, with the right feelings and the right aspect behind it, then grab it with both hands and go and do it and go and promote what we can do.
You said you were treated like rock stars. How surprised were you about the reception that, and even with the promotion of material they were sending out, with like yourselves front and center above all these Irish country stars?
Yeah, I think whenever I first saw one of their main posters, and they had I think it was 6 people, but they had kind of Phil Coulter and the Hamilton Band beside each other, which I thought was quite funny, because obviously Phil Coulter's a massively successful international musician, from Londonderry, from our city, and then you had the Hamilton Band beside it. And in my world, it was kind of quite funny that these 2 totally different sets of musicians were beside each other. And then, like you said, we had these kind of Irish country stars. I think somebody like Cleona Hagan or somebody like that was on it. And it kind of it's when I first saw it, I actually thought, what have we got ourselves into here? I hope they're not expecting too much from us. That was my first instinct, and then I thought, no, do you know what? We absolutely can do this and can be on a par. And it's only once bands and the band community start to promote themselves and show what they can do that people go, yeah, they can come on and put on an hour show. They're not just going to play a couple of marches for 10 minutes and then go away. Let's go and do something different and get people to come to the show and sit down and listen. And as I said before, the response was amazing. There was one that really stood out for me, that was one of the TDs down there, who was actually from Sinn Féin. And she put out about a dozen tweets on the Saturday night of the concert going, I never knew a flute band could sound like this, with sound bites of the band playing on Twitter. And I thought, that just goes to show you what we can do when we go somewhere and showcase ourselves, and almost take away the political aspect that we're a flute band from the PUL community. We're just a flute band, and it's music. And as I said before, music is its own language. And for somebody to come and just appreciate what we're playing, rather than automatically going, oh, I'm not going to that, that was amazing. So, as I say, to see our name up with lights and such was a very proud moment and an exciting moment. I was slightly nervous about it as well, but I think in the end up we pulled it off okay.
Does it make you proud to represent your culture, PEL culture, band culture, whatever you want to call it, in a positive way in Swinford?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I've never been shy or ashamed to tell people that I'm a lifetime member of a flute band, and that is arguably, you know, the biggest thing outside of my family and work life that I do. So I'm very passionate about showcasing what we can do and telling people and letting people see how good we can be. So to go to an international stage and perform and have that welcome and have people go, wow, I've never heard anything like this before. I didn't know flutes could sound like this. Even down to, I didn't know flutes existed that were 7 foot high, you know, with the contrabass flutes. To show people what is available and what we can do, and just to get out of that, you know, bands only causing nuisance on the street ideology, which is so untrue. So to go down to showcase both ourselves, but also our culture and our whole banding community was a massive responsibility, but a massive honor as well. And something that, you know, I remember kind of whenever we came home on the Sunday night, sitting back on the sofa and just kind of taking a deep breath out and going, we've done it. It's everything went to plan. Everybody's home safe. We've put on a really good show, both on the street and in a concert. Everybody's had a great weekend. That's an absolute success. And almost then the next thought was, what's the next trip? Where do we go from here? And yeah, absolutely. It's always an honour to represent, you know, the band community within both Londonderry and Northern Ireland and further afield. So yeah, just overall resounding success and exceptionally proud of what we did.
Would you consider going back to Swinford again, or going to another festival, whether that's in the Irish Republic or in the UK or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think I speak for all the members of the band when I say that, you know, any opportunity that comes our way, we would jump at a moment of notice type thing. You know, after Swinford, we were due and booked to go to the Glasgow Tattoo in the January. That was to be the next thing, and then that was changed or postponed originally, and then obviously COVID and things hit. You know, we had been booked to take part in the Belfast Tattoo this year, which is obviously within our own country. But I think any opportunity to go somewhere, we have no plans in place, but there's a massive appetite to go back to France and to the Somme battlefields for the band. And that's something that I would love to look into and try and make happen. So, you know, again, when we were in Swinford, there was whispers about going to a festival in Dublin and things like this. And, you know, I can only speak for myself and on behalf of the people of the band that any invitation that came in, we would have no qualms about going anywhere as long as we can make it happen. And hopefully you'll come with us as well.
Yep, hope so. For yourselves, even just yourself or members of the band, is participating in events like the cross community, good relations, whatever you want to call them, made you think differently?
I would say they have. I mean, personally, you know, I'm a great believer that regardless of your politics or your religion, we're all one human race and we all have to live in this wee country together. And it would be an awful lot easier if we could learn to live in this country together and get on and, you know, be able to share what we can do. But one thing that I'm very aware of, and I've kind of already alluded to, is that within our community, we tend to allow our culture to be put down, and we don't promote our culture enough, in my opinion. And the resounding feedback that you get when you go to these kind of cross-community, cross-border initiatives is, wow, I didn't know you could do that. And it's because, you know, the media, the social media, the, you know, jury by social media things, they only ever want to showcase negativity. You know, I've said this before, we have, you know, a band parade in Londonderry every 12th of August with, you know, nearly 150 bands pre-COVID that hardly ever makes a news headline. And yet one thing happens to one band and it suddenly becomes a 6-month trial by media. So it's up to the other 149 bands to go, actually, that, you know, A, was wrong, but B, this is what we do. And judge us on our own merits, not by what your preconceived notions of us are. So, you know, I think if we're going to all learn to live together in this little country and get on with each other, we have to learn to understand each other's cultures. For me, as a bandsman, my culture is my music. But interestingly, you know, if you sit in a bar in Dublin and listen to some of the traditional tunes, they're very, very similar to some of the traditional tunes that we play. So, you know, a group of notes together does not make you a bad person or come from the wrong side of the divide, if you like. Music's music, and we share a language of music. And to be able to go to a cross-border or cross-community type event, showcase what we can do, get a response from, you know, the other half of the divide of, wow, I didn't know you could do that. That's amazing. That to me is a success, and that is us learning to appreciate each other's abilities and each other's cultures, and, you know, not hiding ourselves, you know, in a hole. Let's get out there, show what we can do, promote what we can do. You know, the Londonderry Bands Forum has been fantastic, and helping bands get out there and encouraging us to go slightly out of our comfort zone and sometimes. And, you know, I think any of the bands that has done that have had a massive success. And I think, you know, through both the Londonderry Bands Forum and our own bands, we can only keep doing that, keep promoting it, and, you know, and let our culture thrive.
Just on that, what you were saying there about you see yourself as a musician, do you think you hope someday that you'll be called, instead of saying you're a bandsman, I know, even if you want to keep saying you're a bandsman, do you think one day that maybe some people will say you're a musician first and bandsman second? Or
I absolutely would love to at some point see the media, etc., refer to bands as musicians. I'm very proud to be a bandsman, and I think your question, you were trying to be careful about that as well, to say that, you know, I don't want to ever lose the term bandsman, because, you know, that's what I am, and there's, you know, such a massive history and connection with bands and people being bandsmen, and families being bandsmen, and women indeed. But, you know, I think if we could get to the stage where we were appreciated throughout, you know, both Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, the UK, and the wider world as musicians in our own right, that would be the absolute positive, you know, outcome. You know, you look at, as an example, some of the fife corps in America, and they get onto this world stage, and they're amateur fife corps like ourselves, but they're seen as these amazing musicians at the top of their game. And actually, if the media just spun the camera around 180 degrees and looked at ourselves in Northern Ireland, there are unbelievable musicians within the band scene in Northern Ireland. As I've said, many of whom aren't professionally trained, but literally grew up and learned everything they know from their peers and their family within the band. And that's what we need to showcase, is this is what we can do. And, you know, I think I would appeal to every band: get out there, put yourselves out there, put stuff on Facebook, put videos out there, showcase yourselves. Never be, you know, I think we have a natural instinct to want to, you know, keep ourselves to ourselves. And I've always tried to say to our own band, there's a difference between being cocky and being confident. And go out there and be confident about what you do. Be confident in your ability. Be confident in the style and the type of music that you play. Nobody likes, you know, you don't want to be cocky about it because nobody likes that. But be confident and promote yourself positively. You know, indeed, you know, put stuff on Facebook, let people hear it. It doesn't matter whether or not it's, you know, a few Christmas carols at Christmas time that everybody wants to hear it, whether or not it's, you know, a symphony from a contest, or it's marching off on the 12th of July morning, playing the Boyne and the Sash as traditional. That's what we do. We're proud of it. We're not going to make any apologies for it, but let's showcase that, and let's do everything we can to the best of our ability. And so, yeah, if that makes us musicians, I've been more than happy to be called a musician.
Thank you to Tim and Robert for joining me today. If you keep an eye on our social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter and YouTube, you will see after the Hamilton Flute Band in concert in Swinford at 8:30. And join us tomorrow for another podcast.